Has it been raining like every single day since you've been here?
No. Only like, frankly, today, I think.
We're recording. We're live. Hannah, what's up?
Hi, Ted. How are you?
Just today? I feel like it's been gray the past week. How long have you been here?
Since Monday before
And
this one week.
Do you have the New York bug? Like you have to move here now or what? Because you're from Indiana originally.
Yeah, so I have the I'll go anywhere else bug and always have, but I just left home. I flew the coop last year and moved to Chicago. So I've been there for the past year. And although I am getting the city, seeping into my pores a bit, I also have a good thing going on at home, and I kind of like being in and out no matter where I am.
In Indiana, you mean?
Well, in Chicago especially, but Chicago's also within 4 hours to home, and home is where I started like headlining last year, and my buddies still come out and support me, and I'm on a Pacer commercial. So while I got the hot hand, we got to just fucking,
bounce around. I feel you. So is Indiana and like, are there similar parts, like the suburbs of Chicago, suburbs of Indiana, or is Indiana just really suburban?
Dude. It's not even suburban. It's really rural. Like there's some areas of cosmopolitan, if you will, and that would be Indianapolis. Is
it just like the strip, like in Indianapolis? I don't know too much about it.
I'll tell you. I
have some friends who went to Indiana.
Let's sum it up easy breezy.
Put a little closer to you. There you go.
Indiana is the state, if you're not familiar, that made Mike Pence a national problem.
Was he like a governor there first?
For sure. He was our whole fucking thing,
dude.
Know that fucking crypt keeper. So that should tell you everything, calling his wife mother.
So, successful people are from Indiana.
Some people really love it. And I'm from there. Like I said, I'm having a pretty hot hand this year at home, but I also know the limitations of said state. When Roe v. Wade got overturned, Indiana took out a special session to make sure we could co-sign it first out of all the goon-dick states in the fucking union. So think about that. That's today. That's not 1950s. The small town I grew up called Clay City put my sister in blackface in 2005.
How many people grew up in that town?
Not too many, but I mean population around 836 when I was there. So think about that as far as like what New York looks like to me.
Yeah. That's like one block from First Avenue probably to
it's hard
Fifth Avenue.
It's hard to comprehend.
Sure, yeah.
There's like more boroughs in Chicago.
It was pretty spread out though in Indiana.
Oh yeah, it's all acreage, so that's I'm not saying everything about the state, needs in fucking just burnt down. But even if it was, it would be just mostly wide open anyway, because that's kind of the vibes also.
How many people were in your graduating high school class?
By the time the Pregos had to go to alternative school and somebody died in a combine accident or, whatever other small town shit, 73.
What did your growing up experience look like in Indiana compared to maybe going to Chicago and you're seeing so many people do different things? Like, was it just like people graduated from the high school in Indiana and then they kind of worked in town? What did it look like? And I imagine, it's out of the ordinary for you to be in New York now.
For sure. If you hadn't, if you weren't getting married right away, like,
how old? And then
I feel like by 22 in Indiana, if you're not like trying to
you're old.
get marriage minded, dudes. But I mean, I was saying some of my peers were cranking kids out in high school. So I'm about to be 39, even if I look young. Shout out to mom.
Filipinos also look young.
Look at Joe Coy right now. I have no idea how old that dude is.
Yeah, you're right. He's killing it. He's like 31.
He just doesn't even matter. He looks the same as when he started. Probably better because he has way more money now and it's just like flashy and has the sneakers I want. Yeah, it's night and day. I made a joke on stage, and I think New Yorkers think I'm being like cheeky, but they just don't get it if they don't get it, which is where I'm from and what, that looks like. But it's like, even in the lack of people, it was even diversity amongst that sample. Like in high school, kindergarten through 12th grade, never knew another person in our town that was like African American. The only other Asians in town lived in my household. So that's my full Asian mom and my two siblings and the, 2.5 Asians, basically.
Was there a lot of prejudice growing up in your town?
For sure. And it was like whimsical. It was like I just would get called. I mean, it's also the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, so it was like people were really letting a lot of verbiage fly that nowadays is very like frowned upon, you know, like we would call our friends retard. So it's like, it's just a little bit different. You know, there's a new, that social consciousness sort of a shift, which is good. And I'm happy to like be a part of all that. But, you know, I'd get called gook or spick or chink, and I'm half white, half Filipino. So it makes it like hysterical. And I always coped with comedy. I've always been a funny person. So it's like, I don't care if there's 12 people in Clay City. Every one of them that has ever met me would be like, oh, Hannah Roeschlein was a tiny ham who grew into
she's the class clown.
Piece of shit, for sure. And but it was like, we had well-attended birthday parties because like racists love ethnic food. You know, my dad's also the pastor of a church. So it's like there was just all these little parts of like community that I was a part of, but I didn't suffer any less like, you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of like prejudice though, growing up, it just even being popular and outgoing and funny and all the stuff. Like I still heard it, you know, like if I didn't have tinnitus or my earbuds in, I'd probably hear somebody call me something stupid today in this city.
Did you move to Indiana, or like your dad moved there to become a pastor of that town, or were you just like there from day one?
Dad was already a child of that corn. So Dad went over to San Diego to Bible college, managed to wrangle my Filipino mom, who wildly was over there also, had abandoned the Philippines, gave up Catholicism, heard some like a televangelist came to the Philippines and got her, you know, resonated, I guess. And she ends up at the same place that my like former hippie, you know, dad was at. And then they hit it off and he decides he'll take their talents back to the, you know.
They moved to the small town in Indiana. And then what happened to you when you graduated high school? What was your mindset?
Well, I was ready to get the fuck out of there. I'd been praying that Forrest Gump prayer where Jenny's in the field where she's like, dear God, please make me a bird so I can fly far, far, far away from here. I was done, dude. Plus, great movie. I was ready to go. And honestly, I was like, at that point, so this is like 2001, 2002, I was still like very well behaved. My dad is a pastor of a church, you know, so still always has been, is today. Mom, full blown Asian, you know, and I was firstborn. So it's like at that point, it's like I hadn't started drinking or fucking around yet. So I still had big dreams and aspirations. Like I went to IU on a scholarship. I was pre-med double majoring in poli-sci and philosophy. And then freshman year I started drinking, and then I didn't stop for 15 years. So the whole thing just looks kind of, you know, like just a rediscovering of myself that I don't want to say got put on pause at that point, but it was like, I went from being like, I'm the fuck out of here. You know, like I was so excited to contribute to the brain drain to just being like, oh, I'm going to drink and like potentially die here.
Well, you said pre-med. Were you interested in going to med school? And you said drinking for 15 years. So you are sober now?
4 years. I smoke weed, so that's California
sober,
sobriety
right,
or whatever.
Of course.
But yeah, I could even give that up though, so that's how I know it's not like alcohol was. But yeah.
What happened though to the pre-med dreams and then being a double major in college? Because that's a lot of work.
Well, I think I've got the brain cap for it. You know, like watching me swim through my own sets on stage, people are like, "Man, you're really using a lot of space up there for so very little, it feels," you know? And I'm like, I see you. I know. I'll go back to school. I won't. I hated it. But yeah, that was like a big part of it. I was like learning, you know, I wanted to do whatever I needed to do to get away from there. And like at that point, you know, I wanted to like succeed and check all these like boxes that I thought societally were the right thing. So I'm like, oh, a doctor? And I love sports. So I was like, I'll get into orthopedic medicine. You know, I had this like very alpha-like program, you know, and the double major was just a flex for me. It was because, you know, I was from that tiny town. We never had any AP classes. Like if I had to like flex my brain, I had to do it.
You were on scholarship, so you might as well, did you think?
For sure, okay. All that. I also just was like greatly underestimating what was about to happen to me with alcohol, and also how much I really didn't like value the institution educationally, because I've always been like, oh yeah, I got, you know, like I can go through school easy breezy. In fact, I've written enough papers for my brother and friends to have multiple degrees myself. Wow. I am an English. I eventually switched to English because that's more my speed. But, just still, it's led us here. And I'm like, it makes me kind of laugh to think about because
What happened with the alcohol situation?
Dad was a former alcoholic. So in his little origin story, before turning his life over to God, Dad was like I said, a hippie, going to Woodstock. He's got like these crazy like tripweed stories that he'll tell me if I would have, asked or wanted to know growing up. So like before he found Jesus in like his 30s, he, he ran from the police. The guy has like a cool Polaroid where he has like a black eye where they punched him. He was racing cars in the 70s. It's like basically me, in a different day and age and in a white male like frame. But so it's like I had this awareness because of the way he talked that like alcoholism was something that he struggled with, but I just wasn't like touching it. I wasn't like, I was popular in high school, but I was also, like I said, oldest pastor's daughter. This is like pre-internet a little bit even too. So it's like, we just weren't acting out as much. We didn't have as many elements to like get into tomfoolery. You just had to like go out there and do whatever. So like I was even well behaved in high school. I probably could have gone to parties, but I was like, I'm not gonna do this. Plus in my mind, like I was telling you, I wanted to get the fuck out of there. So I was like, even then I wasn't like looking at alcohol like it was the devil, but I had been raised to believe it was the devil in church. And then also with an understanding that Dad had gone through something with it, so I just know that I started, and it's like when you first start at that level, I did it for a decade and a half, 10 plus drinks a day.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
heavy, and I was always in trouble, Ted. Like, it was like, people will go back and you're like, whoa, what was rock bottom? And I was like, dude, forever shifting, but it's something you can't quite put your finger on.
What do you mean forever shifting?
It was just like, I would think I had hit rock bottom where I'm like, 4 days in Marion County Jail, Hannah, did that feel cute? Is that cute? Off just a DUI and you not doing your community service? Like, does that feel like a time to get sober? And it took me like 5 years from that moment, those moments where people will be like, oh, something happened and I woke up outside of the subway and I had to get sober. And I'm so thankful that people have those moments of clarity. I just made a collection of them, and it turned into this like very haunting museum of my life where I was like well aware, that I was like, I'd fought and survived something, but I was also like, dude, it's you. And I wasn't convinced I was really ever going to get out from under it. It's like, it was hard to diagnose at first. Because like I said, we were just in our 20s. I just got away from home. So it was like, of course, everyone drinks. It's also fucking Indiana.
But you were doing great in school still with drinking?
No. So the second it started, I just was like, fuck school.
And how was this, like sophomore year, middle of freshman year?
Middle of freshman, but I didn't even tell mom and dad that I hadn't been going to class for 2 years until sophomore. So it's like, I kind of, you look back and you're like, yeah, I might not have like understood the complexion, like I said, or the fabric of like what drinking was impressing upon me at that time. But I was also not unaware. If I have a big brain and I wanted to get out of there and I like can easily just like, have awareness and understanding of things, like my alcoholism was no different.
What about the scholarship?
Gone. I went to more IU basketball games freshman and sophomore year than I did any classes. And like I said, I towed the line all the way leading up. It was just the first time I didn't have like 4 extra sets of eyes on me. Mom's fucking squint and dad's just, hey, Bucky, get up for school and go do your shit.
Did you graduate from Indiana though?
No. I stopped. I eventually like went and picked up more credits and switched over to English at Indiana State in Terre Haute in like a flash where I was like still drinking, but I would have these like moments of like productivity. So I don't want to act like in that whole 15 years I had nothing to show for it, because it's like easy for me to look back now after a presidential term and be like, damn, what a fucking waste, guy, but like I'm also like, hey, you got to be able to see some things in this whole thing. And you do. And you always did. It's like, even now being like a popular person, I collected all those people still during the drinking years too. Like they're just like, I'm thankful to have people in my life that say cool shit to me that like I wouldn't necessarily like arrive upon on my own, of being like, Hannah, that whole thing, it was like, you only view yourself as having like been spinning your wheels. Like everybody else felt movement from you. It just wasn't all the time the way they wanted me to go, which was up. which is everyone, you know? So it's like, I don't know. I managed to like, I think through my own imagination, get through that time drinking where I could just like continue, even if it was like, there's no way we're going to get away from this now. Like this has already got so stupid. So, you know, just like I was saying, if I knew I kind of had issues like wrecking a car, you know, drunk on absinthe when I was 21, my first DUI, it's like that kind of stuff is like, that's like I was saying, those little like constantly shifting rock bottoms where I was just like, oh, this isn't like, this is what it is.
But was there a point when you were like 25 years old where you were like, all right, the last 2 or 3 years have really not been good. I see myself kind of tumbling down. Or was it just like day by day, you're like, I can handle it. Other people are alcoholics, but I can handle it and get shit done.
Mixed bag of all of that. I mean, it's all little lies that you tell yourself to get from point A to point B every single day. You know, there's a million things like, you know, there's nothing you can do about it to, you know, you're just, this is what you've chosen for yourself. Like you'll, you know, and I was also one of those people where I wanted to get away in so many ways, like we were talking about growing up. So it's like when I actually like got into drinking, I was like, I'd have these little moments, like I said, where I'd go back to school or I'd like train for a mini marathon or I'd do something, but like none of those things were ever like fully sustainable because of the level that I was drinking. So it would just be more like little moments of like chill, and I could get things to where I was just having like a bottle of wine a day as opposed to 2.
So after Indiana State, you graduated from there, correct?
No, I still didn't finish. I'm probably still like 2 semesters worth of credits to crank an English major. And it's funny now being this age and walking around New York City and having like more of like an understanding of my own brain or discipline where I'm like, oh, Hannah, remember when you were young and you had NYU send you a book all the way to the cornfields? If you want to finish here one day, you can. Super easy.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
I just mean like, I'm having these little like epiphanies of understanding where I'm like, oh, everything you dreamed of in the start, you can still have all those things too, right alongside your comedy, right alongside all of it. You know, just like being over here and seeing the universities, I'm like, oh, I'm 2 semesters away. And then sometimes I'm like, the way people act so stupid and let me keep doing comedy, I'm like, someone's going to fuck around and give me an honorary degree anyway. And that's all mom and dad have ever wanted. I was on this magazine cover of a local thing in Indy this past year, and like mom and dad hung it up in between my sisters, like, and brothers' diplomas.
I love that.
But it's like the great joke in the house because it's like even those 2 high achievers would tell you that like I'm the smartest one. So it's become this like just a shit show of circumstances. But yeah, New York's a trippy place to, you know, finally kind of come in and be like, wow, I've seen myself here a million times. But I'm also not a kid now. So what do you want to do?
Did you move home when you had the issue? Like when did your parents fully diagnose, I guess, your drinking problem?
I feel like dad knew right away. As well, like at least it's the first time I got in trouble. So like getting a DUI, because it's like that for him was probably something he'd been walking around with like a loaded gun anyway in his own mind of being like, will I see my own alcoholic genes passed down to one of these kids? And the thing is, like I said, I wasn't drinking in high school, so we couldn't like see it, and we weren't Catholic, so it wasn't like alcohol was even like something we could like dabble around with. It was like very teetotaling. You know, I've still never even had a drink in front of my parents, even with what I was talking about, a raging alcohol problem.
So you never have had
No, but it's also because I left home at 18 and I never moved home. Even when it was like, I thought I was going to be homeless, I kept that away from them.
Well, where were you though?
Indianapolis, Terre Haute, you know, so like outside of my small town, still in Indiana, but just not.
Just finding housing month to month?
Or, you know, a year at a time. I still, like I was saying, was still a popular person who like loved other people. I was just a fucking drunken asshole at some point every day. And mostly just to myself. I think a lot of people now like were shocked when I came out and was like, wow, I'm going to get sober. And I've tried to do this a million times. You know, people were like, whoa, we didn't even know you were drinking like that.
But
you know?
one of your friends wasn't like maybe at a bar in Indianapolis, for example, like, Hannah, you were crazy last night. You have to stop drinking.
Always.
You never had. Oh, okay.
No, I was always having that. I always had to have like somebody would like I'd wake up most mornings like feeling like I owed someone an apology and
Really?
had no idea why. You know, and it was usually just kind of like the same person, which was typically like potentially a significant other. You know, I didn't tend to like date ever like mental matches. I just chose people who could facilitate my alcoholism or not like even try to like stoke fires of creativity within me in times when I was not going to get away from that bottle. Cause it's like, even what we've been talking about the whole time kind of stems back to like me during that 15 years being like, okay, I know what I would like to do, which clearly, you know, in this conversation is a handful of things. You know, many things. I want to write a book. I've always like wanted to do all kinds of weird little things like pilots for TV and different stuff. But it's like, if I had that knowledge as a kid that I potentially could go into all of that, but I had the upbringing I did, which I'm not blaming them, but you know, still a heavily religious pastor dad right now. Like dad told me recently where we're at on his personal timeline for the book of Revelation. So like, that's heavy. That's 4 horsemen of the apocalypse energy on top of my pussy jokes. Like it's a lot. And I love those fuckers, you know, like they're me and I'm them, but it's like, I'm also not, and I'm not that little kid anymore, you know? And I think when I kind of like decided, I was like, I spent a lot of time just understanding that for me to do my creativity the way that I thought would be like most reflective of me and the work that I have inside of me or to share, I was going to hurt people that I care about a lot.
Did you ever have people that you can look at them and be like, they are a bad influence on me? And then maybe you started to see people who are a good influence on you in your life. Maybe it didn't happen until you moved to Chicago or you stopped drinking, but were you like, all right, these are bad kids. I should probably stop hanging out with them.
For sure. But I was like president of that group.
In a bad way though?
I mean, sometimes I feel like in my drinking years, I remember one time I was like basically I was just like working in fine dining most of that whole time because it was like
Indianapolis.
Yeah. It was like a way for me to just like make easy money, hide my alcoholism or have it like exacerbated.
What did that look like, hiding your alcoholism? Like, will you just be taking shots before your shift or something like that?
Sometimes drinking at work eventually.
Like finishing the drinks that didn't get finished on the table?
No, I was like, it would never got there. But I mean, I would bring my own alcohol in, like, and some of it was just like for maintenance, like, whereas like, hey, if I don't have a drink or two, my hands will shake, you know? So it's like, do you want this martini like that or not, you know? But it was like, and it, like we were saying, it wasn't always there. And like certain points in my 20s, there weren't like certain physical symptoms that are going to show up yet the way they're going to when you've been drinking 10 years into your 30s. You know, we metabolize things faster in our 20s. So it's like, it was like, oh, I feel like shit every day, but nothing that I couldn't, like I said, run through. I could still go to Orange Theory. I could still like do these types of things. But then, you know, chronically, that becomes a whole different situation. So it's like, you know, people like probably for the like 3 years or so before I even sobered up, my body was already physically telling me, like, buddy, we can't tell you when this is going to be, but if you're done with, you know, life and you've experienced enough and this has felt relentless and you can't do it the way you want, well, just keep it up because you're almost toast and it's going to be in your mid-30s and it's going to hurt a lot of people, but whatever, because it's yours. And I was just like sitting on this knowledge, could like literally feel my insides just like in varying states of like atrophy and just like, ugh. And still doing the whole thing. And then, yeah, 4 years ago, it was like, I really don't think much back on that time because it was like I'd been contemplating my sobriety since I started drinking in some ways, you know, of being like, hey, you can't do this and this. You can't do this and this.
What did your last year look like before sobriety? Run us through a day, like waking up.
Well, the wild thing is I had just started comedy. So
a year before you went sober?
Yeah, so about a year and a half. I've been doing comedy like approaching the 6-year mark. So about 4 years of that sober from alcohol.
And you were doing shows in Indianapolis?
For sure. And I thank God for that because it's like, it's a small market and I was only getting 5 minutes at a time like you do when you first start. So it was like, it was hard to even see how fucking much my hippocampus was detached. like detached because like I might not be at every single show blacked out, but like based on what we're talking about, I'd been drinking for 15 years. I'd been doing comedy for a year and a half. So it was like one is way bigger of a presence, like, and is going to be the one that leads in a dance, you know, and like I would just be, and I'm an English major, like, or close to, like we were talking about. So it's like I was writing jokes like I do right now, but by the time I'd get up there, I'd be in 50 Shades of blacked out somewhere.
And you were a little nervous.
Oh,
too.
My punchlines would swim. Of course, I'm still nervous now, you know, and running an hour. It's like wild to even like consider that whole thing, but it was not nonetheless. Just so I was just drinking a shit ton. If you imagine if that's like the kind of death spiral of a really long dance with something for me, also coinciding with my very like formative memories and moments in comedy. It was a shit show.
So you'd wake up, drink a couple drinks on stage. How did it look on the day that you had a show in Indianapolis in your first, year of comedy?
I don't know, just however many drinks I'd had, I'll just go up at that time. And like we were talking, it's like I've been funny. And the thing is, I had a lot of friends the whole time I've been alive, from a small town to a bigger city, So now it's like even my first open mic, even drunk as fuck and not even remembering my stage time, my friends were there. I had like 15.
I'm sure you got a lot of
I had like
laughs.
15 buddies come to my first open mic in Indianapolis, So it's like, yeah, it does. It's like maybe to some people it's like, oh, look what it's grown to. But it's like, oh, I had that. I just was definitely not wielding the same instrument though. Aside from just like having, fortunately, an inner mechanism that like gravitates towards humor at every turn. And like I said, fortunately, only very few eyes on me, most also drinking, in Indiana. So it's like, hey, I kind of just like, but in the weekend before I got sober for good, and I just had this told to me by a friend in Indianapolis because I like don't even think too much about it anymore. My buddy was like, he started doing comedy at the same time as me, and we've like talked about all this stuff from the very start. And Dyke was like, Hannah, I was at home like 2 weeks ago. He's like, do you realize what weekend it kind of is? And I'm like, no. He was like, well, this was a weekend. He was like, recently he's like, a few years ago, he's like, he got to do like, we were first doing comedy, my buddy. And he got to do some like little jokes in front of the short films at the art museum for like the Heartland Film Festival. Okay. And we thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And we were so excited. And I wore these like Christian Louboutins that some dumb dude bought me.
Oh, hell yeah.
But I was like really drunk. I was wearing a filmmaker pass and everybody thought I was like my buddy's agent. And we were just being silly, but I was also still drinking in that weekend. So I was like a +1 to this event. There's pictures of me and you can just see it in my dumb drunk eyes, that I'm fucking faded, but we were having a great time. Still remember very fondly this like moment. And then now 4 years later, I was like sitting at his house and he like throws a program towards me and I'm like, what's this? And he's like, it's you dumb bitch. He's like, it's the Heartland Film Festival lineup. He's like, that feature you shot last year is in there. He's like, what a fucking pivot, And I'm like, Jesus, but it's like one of those moments too, whereas like, I can't stress enough that like, if you're alive and like doing something that you're kind of in a, flow to do or wanted to do, like you can be in places, whether you're drinking or not, whether you want to like get things out of your life that are potentially like creating obstacle. Cause like even 4 years ago, sloppy drunk, I was at that film festival that I'm like a part of now, but wildly different roles.
Do you think it's possible for somebody to be able to drink like 2 glasses of vodka a day, drink a whole bottle of wine, maybe at night and function?
Think about just think about the office we work in. You see plenty of people having drinks of all shapes and sizes or all kinds of substances, and there's no judgment for me.
Yeah, you ever have any experience where you get tempted at being at comedy clubs? Because 90% of the people at any given comedy club, the comics, staff,
For sure.
People who are not even working that night are drinking.
Yeah, there's definitely those moments, but if anything, they're just coming attached to like a poor set in my mind, and it's more just like wanting that ability to like wash it away quickly.
That's great.
But it's not anything of like me looking around, because I'm understanding, based on what we were talking about, there is so much in between me and what I'm doing right now. as far as like the kind of alcohol, that I was consuming.
What was your drink of choice, by the way?
Oh, such a mixed bag, dude. But often I was drinking PBRs because they were cheap.
What's that, a beer?
Yeah, Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You drink like a 12-pack of that every day? Something?
Easily, I could have. But I'd be mixing it around, it's like, because I was out and about. I'm half Asian, so I've never like struggled getting dick. Or having like it thrown at me in any way, shape, or form. I don't care. I was like the most exotic kid in the cornfields, and now I'm still hot. And so it's like,
I love it.
And now I got this like non-binary frame that people are like, we don't even care what it is. Just come over here. Come over here with your gravel voice, weird boy.
That's hilarious.
Fucking weirdo. Yeah. So there's all that too.
How's Chicago been?
Fucking love it. That's why I don't want to leave it. Like, I will say this, like, I will be in New York a lot, as much as I can. The Stand passing me was a fucking dream, dude. That's something I think I had written down in the past, like at least 2 years somewhere on a piece of paper was, to eventually get past there, the Cellar, and I have no idea when I write those things down how long that's going to take. As everybody's easy bake fucking dings at different times, and I don't fucking care,
Yeah, you see all these little signs I have all over the place. If you just look in the kitchen.
Oh, for sure.
I have stuff everywhere. Yeah. People sometimes come over like, aren't you embarrassed by that stuff? I'm like, no. If you're embarrassed, get out of here.
For sure, fuck off.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There's plenty of time to be embarrassed. This isn't the way,
Totally, yeah. Not on the world. Hannah, you've been so open this entire time. Maybe we want to switch topics to something brighter. What are you looking forward to the end of this year and then come in 2023? You're going to be taking the train from Chicago to New York? Oh my God, that's like a 15-hour train, right?
No, there's actually super cheap flights from Indy to New York City.
Oh, and Chicago to New York City too, right? It's like 150.
Not bad at all. I've been finding them under $100.
Oh, really? Spirit though, or like?
No, sometimes not. But even Spirit's an hour 40 from Indy.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I mean, you don't even need to buy the internet.
Yeah, you can be standing in the pole in the back of the Spirit.
If you can't be quiet for 140, I just don't know what to tell you. You don't want it enough. In brighter news, let's see. I recorded an album with 800 Pound Gorilla that should be coming out in the next several months. It's called Asian American Psycho.
Love that. And then is that being dropped on YouTube on their channel?
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Yet? I'm contractually, I didn't really pay much attention to everything. I wrote my name
like, just
on.
let me do an hour.
Oh, no doubt. I was like, I'm gonna change my mind.
An hour? You're fine. You're throwing it up.
I was like, I'm gonna change my mind, or Bobby Kelly's gonna pull back on the support that got me and us all into this issue in the first place. And then, so there's that. That'll be coming out. I'll probably do more on the internet, so people will leave me alone.
Well, let me ask you this: since you've been sober, has it taken you, I guess, 4 years to create this hour? Is this the first hour especially putting out?
Yeah, it definitely was the sum of the past 4 years for sure. And like I said, for the first year and a half was pretty blurry, but I still, like I said, managed to kind of just put some things together one piece at a time that have easily come into my first hour.
Is there anything that triggers you, maybe joke-wise or life-wise, to be like, you know what, maybe I can go back to drinking a couple of drinks a day. It wasn't so bad. Maybe not 10, but I can have 2 or 3.
I think about the fact that I believe I could be capable of moderation at all times.
You do still believe that now?
For sure, because it's like I'm in a different mindset. So I believe that, your mindset can create your reality.
Like you and I met each other last week smoking a joint in moderation. You were passing it very generously. Oh my gosh, by the way, I have your lighter. We're going to give that back.
We will.
Entertain them, Hannah.
I'm not, so you can just look for me on the internet, dudes. Thank you for this. It's so cute too.
Stole Hannah's lighter 5 days ago. I was like, I'll get it back to you maybe when I'm in Indianapolis or Chicago, or when you're on the freaking couch.
Yes, and here I am. Here I am. I was sharing nerds that night that a fan had given me in the bathroom at the Stand. Yeah. Yeah, that's a true story, because that's the power of the internet. So don't give up on your dreams, and you too can shoot an album that, 60 people will be a really big fan of.
60 million.
Minus 2.
60 million.
Your
58
parents.
Million. Have your parents heard your comedy?
So hand to God, in the whole time I've been doing it, they've never seen me do a set. But
not like the open mics in Indiana.
But it's honestly for, as you can kind of tell, all our protection. I really do love and respect them so much. And like I said, if I even with the way I was drinking wasn't drinking at home or like cursing in front of them, I've always been like pretty about face when I see them, and not to be like fake, but just because I just like do love them. So it's like,
I want them to be proud of you.
For sure. That's why.
Are they listening or watching?
No, they're not going to be. Mom doesn't even know how to use the internet. Asian and can't use the internet. Just
it's so unlike. Right?
You did it, Sam. You did it, Samsung. You're winning. And Dad does. Dad knows better. Dad even told me one time, just like kind of being cocky at home. He's like, Hanny, your schedule is online, so if I want to come in and see you one of these days, I can. Because like I said, we just have this unwritten kind of agreement where it's like, hey, you know that love and respect we have for each other? It will potentially be diminished, and in ways that aren't personal, but they're going to feel that way if you walk in and watch me do any of this exercising towards, you know, this album recording. Because like everything I've done leading up, like I can be an observational comic. I look forward to those years. I'll be fucking rich. The second I like want to like work clean, and I'll just be like coming for John Christ money, and I'll have Joel Osteen on stage, and it will just be beautiful, dudes. I look forward to that. But for now, you know, I got sober so I could feel like freedom, and I don't fear God and I don't fear them. And that's something I've like let them know now graciously and lovingly in adulthood. So it's like, hey, you can come in there, but like me calling you Tom Lennon and Loco Ono will be the least of your concerns. Mom, you barely speak English, so you're not even going to get it. I speak way too fast for you, and half the time in slang. Dad, I'm also talking about jerking it to, you know, jars of clay growing up. So like none of this will you enjoy right now. So please just like, let's not. But, you know, look forward to the other years.
The second hour? The third hour?
Cow, I'll still look 12 at 50. Like, we're all going to be fucking fine, you know? But, like, I just, for now, that's just, like, how I've kind of chosen to tumble through.
You going to be touring soon at all with that hour? Looking for dates and places?
Yeah.
But you love Chicago, so why not run the scene
right
there?
Now I'm just, like, enjoying just this kind of, like, surrender portion of my calendar where I'm like, hey.
Is that the end of the 2022, you mean?
For sure, where I'm just like, I'll be out west again. My kid sister lives out in Malibu, so like, if you want to put me on your independent LA stages, I'll be so happy. I still don't think I have the comedy crypto necessary to get on like the major the major stages.
Doing solid today.
I know, I'm doing fine.
Today.
All the people I really look up to are on the stages there. Yes, worth them. But yeah, I'll be out and about, just tooling around. Have that hour coming out. About to drop merch. Probably do a podcast of my own because 800 Pound Gorilla's contract gives me access to the podcast studio at the Cellar. So maybe that feels like something I should do when I'm in the city of New York.
Totally.
Just since everybody good at my job and heroes wise are here all the time. So maybe I could talk to them and you over there too, Ted.
Are you loving New York each and every time you're coming back more and more?
I'm into it.
And also New York over LA, I would think, right?
Oh my God, all day.
Do you like driving? A lot of driving probably in Indiana and maybe a little Chicago.
So I'm apathetic towards it. It was like, hey, if you got to get 40 minutes in the car to get to the closest Walmart growing up, you just have more of a chill in those spaces.
Like
I do not like it. As an efficient adult now, I don't want to come to LA and have to be like an hour in between trying to get to something that's very, very close. New York at least provides me the ability to rip reps if I want in a way that's like, okay, because I still have to cash spot paychecks. Like, you know, I have an OnlyFans. There's just like it's a Build-A-Bear that is not my favorite right now, but you guys are into it, so 50 people, $9.11 at a time.
We're raising the freaking rate after this episode.
We're everywhere. But yeah, New York's way better also.
There's no central part of New York too. Like you said, you're staying with your friend in Brooklyn, and I don't want to say deep Brooklyn, but it's in Brooklyn, you know?
For sure.
And the thing is, like, to get here to all the way on the other west side of Manhattan, what would it take, 35 minutes?
At least.
Which is not so bad, though. You figure if you're trying to get from Venice to Hollywood, rush hour,
annoying.
An hour and 20 minutes. You cannot do 2 spots in a night. Here, you can go deep in Brooklyn and have some of the best sets of your life, best crowd, and with other comics that are great.
You could probably answer this for me more, but I also feel like I really feel that strong affectation in LA that's just like not really my vibes anymore, where I'm like, it's not too cool for school, but it just feels like a lot of people where like I watch people for the first time and I know that comic, if they were just running what they thought was funny, would be funny to me, but because they get up in there I mean, honestly, this would serve me in my career to be more serious on stage and run tight sets so people would look at me and be like, hey, maybe we could see that on late night, but I also, like I told you, don't work clean right now, so there's no way I'm going to be on late night, so fuck it. I just like, and then I go in there and just fucking riff and just nutty, and everyone's like, oh my God, what the fuck's happening over here? But New York, it's not like that. New York, you have to like fight rats for attention and nobody gives a fuck. And everybody like kind of wants you to do crowd work because you guys do it so masterfully over here. But I'm not used to doing it because I was in Indiana. I wasn't going to be like, hey, so what do you do? And they're like, meth. And I'd be like,
I just work on the cornfield.
Why don't you just listen to the things that I'm telling you about myself, okay? And then now I'm over here and everyone's like, make us laugh, but include us, sad monkey. Yeah. And I'm like, I know how. I just don't want to, Connor. So I'm acclimating. It's good for me to be over here eating a dick every third set.
Sure.
Knowing I have that ability. But it's also been really cool, too, because, like, it's like the best comedy that's happening in the world, bar none, any day of the week. So it's like
any borough, really any comedy club.
For sure. Getting to run through the stand, like I said, not only like a dream for me to get past there, but just even being like sandwiched in between, like I said, people that I just look up to a great deal and that make me like dumb nervous, but then have really had like cool things to say to me. Like Bonnie McFarlane the other night was like, just even when she first met me, she was like, hey, Hannah, I can tell you're a real comic. And I just looked at her like, oh, that is I'm good for the rest of the year. The fact that you can just tell I'm a real comic, Bonnie.
How much longer are you here for?
Till maybe Thursday morning, but then I'm going to come right back on the 20th. I'm starting to do
some... Of October?
Yeah.
So you'll just be back for a week?
Yeah, I'm going away and doing a week's worth of shows at Laugh Factory and back home in Indy. I'm producing for Brandon Sagalow on Friday. Back home in Indianapolis, and then doing some reps in Chicago, and then I'm going to race back over here and do some more stuff at the stand. I'm hosting for the very first time soon there.
We love it. Hannah, this was really terrific. Thank you so much for coming on
Thanks
the podcast.
For having me,
you were an open book. You were really great. Where can we find you? Social media, on the road. We're popping it up right here. Let us know, Hannah.
I try to make it very easy on y'all and mostly just for me being high all the time. You can follow me at Vanderpump Rules. That's like Vanderpump, but HAN. That's my Twitter, OnlyFans, and Instagram. So.
And it's popping. It's freaking popping. Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Leave a freaking comment, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.